Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 28th of July of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And as usually the most important and interesting updates are coming from the south of Ukraine, from Zaporizhzhia area. And as you know, as you saw during the day, we haven't received a lot of updates from this territory, from this sector. Mainly we got the videos of yesterday's clashes and probably of this morning clashes of the local time. And basically we can say that Ukrainians have stopped their offensive operation in this area. There are many reasons of that, and probably the most important reason of that Ukrainians stopped their offensive operation is that the rain started in this area. And currently the Ukrainians are no longer able to use their armored vehicles for redeployment and regrouping. Now the Ukrainians can't bring more forces, and that's why they can't continue their offensive operation. The second reason why the Ukrainians stopped their offensive operation is that heaviest losses that they got during the days between 23rd and 27th of July. But the Ukrainians will continue their offensive operation. I believe that now we can discuss one more time that operation. As you can see on this video, we have the freshest episode of the Battle of Robotyne. The Ukrainians got this probably unlucky line, this one, and as a result of drones attacks, as a result of artillery strikes, the Ukrainians lost significant number of their armored vehicles and so on. And I don't know about you, but when I was watching that video, that episode of Battle of Robotyne, I had one question. Why did the Ukrainians stop? And probably this is the most important question. Let's take a look at that video one more time, at least at this episode in the end of the video when the Russians were bombing those armored vehicles, this significant episode with Lancet strike while the Ukrainians were doing some kind of landing operation. Why the Ukrainians stopped? Why didn't Ukrainians continue their offensive operation to the south? And there are a lot of course, answers to this question. The first one, and probably the most obvious, is that the Ukrainians didn't know the situation about the mines on the fields on the south of that line. So let's add the line where the Ukrainians stopped. Basically, this is the line where the Ukrainians stopped. And after that, after the Ukrainians reached that line, we haven't received even a single video or photo confirmation of any progress to the south. There were some videos from another angle like this one. And in the Military Summary channel, we published this video considering that Ukrainians continue advancing to the south of Robotyne, but basically this is the same situation above the yellow line, but from another angle. Of course, there are a lot of points of smoke, but those smokes belongs to the Ukrainians, and every single smoke is above this yellow line. The only explosion probably took place in the eastern part of Robotyne, this one, but maybe that was attack of Ukrainian tank on the edge positions of the Russian forces. So the Ukrainians stopped on this line and they didn't proceed further. And the first reason of that is that probably, and there's very high chances that the territory below the yellow line is completely mined by the Russian forces, and the Ukrainians didn't have any intelligence information about the situation, and they just didn't risk to continue. Furthermore, if you take a look at this video one more time, there is also a very important episode, this one. You see that Ukrainians have landed their troopers, and the troopers managed to capture the fortifications in this area. So basically, when the Russians were destroying all those Ukrainian tanks and armored vehicles, as I understand, maybe the Russians managed to kill just a few soldiers, but the main forces managed to land from those armored vehicles and to capture the trenches along this forest line. So basically, we can say we don't know about the exact situation on the north between this yellow line, this yellow cloud, and this situation, but for sure we can say that no matter the situation, no matter the number of destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles, the Ukrainians managed to capture this yellow square and to establish their bridgehead. From the Russian side, we haven't received even a single confirmation of, let's say, bombing and shellings from the Russian side of these positions by drones, by FVP drones. Maybe there were some episodes of that, but we yet haven't received even a single confirmation of that. Now let's try to analyze and try to understand what is the next Ukrainian plans. And Of course, there are at least two possible solutions for the Ukrainians. The first one, somehow to find a solution and to continue advancing to the south in direction of Novopokrovka, and with this attack from this bridgehead to cut the supply and support of Robotyne from the south, and probably even to storm Novopokrovka, and even to create a cauldron. Probably the first real cauldron that Ukrainians can create on this battlefield. This is the first solution. But in this case, the Ukrainians will be forced to attack completely unknown area, the minefields on the south of this yellow square. The second possible direction of Ukrainian attack is to attack to the east in direction of Verbova. Let's say from this area in direction of Verbova. The problem is that there is the same problem. There are also minefields. This area is completely mined by the Russians. But when talking about this area, let's say the southern area is mined, the eastern area is mined. But when we compare these two minefields, we understand that to advance and to continue developing of offensive operation to the east probably is the better solution for the Ukrainians. And the problem and the thing is why this direction, this one, the eastern one, is better in direction of Verbova, because the Ukrainians do have possibility to send the tanks with the mining equipment. I'm not sure, and highly unlikely the Ukrainians have possibilities to send their demining tanks to the south in this area. And the thing is, we saw on the videos, Lancet strikes, artillery strikes, and many other types of strikes, and the Russians basically destroyed everything that entered that salient, that's probably artillery back. And when talking about the eastern flank, this area is located closer to the mainland, to the Ukrainian positions, and I believe that the Ukrainians have higher chances to survive. The tanks and the weapon equipment with the mining equipment, the armored vehicles with the mining equipment have better chances to survive in this area in comparison with this one. So as I understand, according to information we have, according to geolocations we have, probably after a small operational pause, after small regrouping, the Ukrainians will change their vector of attack and they will start their movements to the east, probably in this direction. But first, of course, they need to demine these fields, and after that they will begin. Furthermore, these days we got a video from the Ukrainian sources and the Russian sources that somehow the Ukrainian armored vehicle managed to enter the field. It was the lost one, and this armored vehicle got the Surovikin defense belt. Let's call it like this. I won't be surprised if there were no even a soldier or driver inside of the armored vehicle, but anyway, this is the fact. Furthermore, some Western mappers have already updated their map, showing that this territory, I will color this territory with the cloud, this area is already under Ukrainian control, or at least in the gray zone. For now, yet we haven't received even a single video or photo confirmation that Ukrainians were able to achieve such a progress. If we will increase the number of updates during the week, since the beginning of this, let's say on the 23rd of July, we see that from this territory, from this sector, we've got just two updates. The bombing and shelling, and this is probably one of the mappers who have already updated the map, and the video of lost armored vehicles, nothing more. The most of updates were received in the vicinity of Robotyne on the northern part, when the Ukrainians were trying to probably to enter and to attack this settlement in front, and the second direction to the south, to this yellow line, where the Ukrainians stopped, and after that they haven't made even a single attempt to proceed further and to develop the offensive operation. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area in the vicinity of Robotyne during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians lost 180 soldiers, 26 armored vehicles, including 3 Leopards and 2 AMX tanks, French tanks, and 2 artillery systems, one M777 howitzer and another Strela 10. So those were the losses of the Ukrainians on this bridgehead during the Battle of Robotyne. Now we are moving further to Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Today we got probably the final confirmations that Ukrainians managed to enter the settlement, that Ukrainians managed to capture the settlement, but the Russians are saying that Ukrainians probably forced the Russians to step back because almost every single building in that area was destroyed. This is the video of the entrance, this is the episode how the Ukrainians were entering that settlement, and as soon as the Ukrainians realized that this is basically a ruined settlement without normal fortifications, Ukrainians without a normal possibilities to hide from the Russian artillery system, the Ukrainians took a decision to leave the southern part of Staramayorske, and currently they're trying to develop and to establish their strongholds just on the northern part. So basically, according to the pieces of information we have, there are no Ukrainians in the southern part, and the Ukrainians just in the northern area, and currently the Ukrainians are trying to develop their positions. Of course, the Russians see everything. They bomb, attack, and shell the Ukrainians 24 hours, and now the Ukrainians is in the bad situation, but we know that Ukrainians are not counting their losses because they have objectives, they have their goals, and they will try to achieve them no matter the losses and so on. The Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area for the Battle of Staramayorske, the Ukrainians lost 110 soldiers, 7 armored vehicles, and 3 artillery systems: 1 D-20 howitzer, 1 D-30 howitzer, and Stab B artillery system. So as you can see, the total losses of the Ukrainians on the Zaporizhzhia and South Donetsk area were more than 290 soldiers and more than 36 armored vehicles. The level of losses is very heavy, and this is the not last wave of attack. We're going to see more and more. Furthermore, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that in the vicinity of Takhmachka, the Russians managed to discover and to destroy the headquarters of the 10th Military Corps. The military corps that was involved in the attack in the direction of Robotyne. And the 10th Military Corps is 118th Mechanized Brigade with the icon of a claw, 47th Mechanized Brigade with the horse from the checkmates, and of course the forces of 116th Mechanized Brigade, this one, with the icon with a tiger on the shield. So those were the updates from Zaporizhzhia area. Before talking about Donetsk area, we will stay on the same, let's say, direction. We are going to talk about another attack, or the first attack in the direction of Rostov-on-Don. The Russians have already announced and reported that those were terrorist attacks, and that the Ukrainians were using the S-200 missiles to attack the settlements on the territory of Russian Federation. There was 2 waves of attacks, and those attacks took place somewhere at 4 or 5 p.m. of the local time. The Russians reported that Ukrainians were using S-200 missiles. All those missiles were shot down by the Russians, and the parts of those missiles fell on the city, and the parts caused a lot of damage. And this is very important because the Russians are not denying that they managed to shut down missiles, and that the parts of missiles fell down in the city. And the destructions and the buildings that were destroyed, that was probably like results of Russian air defense system work. And we have these results. The sources are saying that around 19 people were wounded. There were no killed or dead people, neither in Taganrog and neither in Azov settlement that located in the vicinity of Rostov-on-Don. All these icons are not geolocated. Like accurately, we know that explosions took place in these 2 settlements. But now we need to discuss another important topic. The Ukrainians were attacking the Rostov-on-Don using the S-200 missiles. And if we take a look at the map, we're going to see 2 icons. We have the icon of Valery Gerasimov and probably the icon of Igor Konashenkov. Maybe these 2 guys, but the most important is of course Valery Gerasimov. He's the head of Russian army. He's the head of special military operation, and currently he's responsible for everything that has place on the territory of special military operation. So as I understand, the Ukrainians were planning to attack him. They were planning to attack him, but I have one question. Why the Ukrainians took a decision to use S-200 missiles to attack this person, to kill the head of Russian army, to destroy the main headquarters? And I have at least a few options of that. First of all, probably the Ukrainians were sending S-200 missiles with one purpose: to stress and to test Russian air defense. Basically, they just wanted to figure out and to understand the level of air defense of the Russians in this area. And for those purposes, they took a decision to use a cheap S-200 missiles. And basically, as I understand, the Ukrainians managed to discover, to track, and to find out the Russian air defense positions. And according to this logic, I expect that within the next 24 hours, maybe even less, maybe 12 hours, the Ukrainians will make another attempt to attack, but with the real missiles, with Storm Shadow missiles, and their target and their goal is going to be to destroy the Russian headquarters in Rostov-on-Don. Of course, this is going to be at least significant media victory. I'm not saying that they will be able to kill anyone from like big boss, big persons, but anyway, this is going to be a very nice media victory for the Ukrainian and for the Storm Shadow missiles as a marketing step. But there is another option. The thing is that during the previous days, let's say during this week, the Russians made massive missile attack on the western part of Ukraine. We had a lot of videos of that. We had a lot of videos of flying calibers above the western part of Ukraine, and some sources were saying that a lot of explosions, and one of the goal of the Russian missile attack was the aircrafts in Starokonstantinovka against the 7th Air Aviation Brigade. This brigade has at least had a lot of Su-24 aircrafts that were maybe still able to carry the Storm Shadow missiles. And there is a very high chances that during those attacks the Russians managed to destroy the Ukrainian aircrafts, airfields, and the Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of those attacks in the western part of Ukraine, the Russians managed to destroy a lot of airfields, a lot of aircrafts, and the most important, the warehouses with missiles and fuel depots as well. So the second option is that Ukrainians planned that operation to attack the Russian headquarters for a very long time. And maybe the Russians managed to discover those plans and they attacked the airhouses, aircrafts and so on, and ruined the Ukrainian plans. But the plans there were plans, and that's why the Ukrainians took a decision to make some changes in the plans, and they used S-200 missiles to attack the same target. So maybe this is the second option. Anyway, we're going to understand this within the next few days or even a day. I'll repeat here. If we are going to see the strike of Storm Shadow against this settlement, that means that there was an option, first option. If we are not going to see anything, then that was the last wave of attack, and from now on we are not going to see more attempts from the Ukrainian side to attack this settlement. Now we are moving further. We're going to talk about Donetsk front line. When talking about Donetsk, Avdiivka, Marinka, we haven't received any updates from this bridgehead. Probably there were some clashes along the combat line, but without any big activities from both sides. When talking about Klishchiivka, we got a lot of updates from this area. A lot of updates were received from the Ukrainian side. For example, today, as we discussed in the morning video, the Ukrainians managed to discover and to destroy the Russian TOS flamethrower system that probably was heading in direction of Klishchiivka. The explosion was very heavy. Also, we got another video how the Ukrainians managed to discover and to destroy the Russian artillery system Gvozdika. So as you can see, the Ukrainians currently are doing very well artillery duels and counter-artillery duels, the intelligence battles and so on. Furthermore, we got another video how the Ukrainians were bombing and shelling the Russian positions in Andriivka. On this video we see how the Ukrainians managed to track the Russian probably reconnaissance team, and after that they start bombing and shelling these positions with artillery, with the cluster munitions and so on, cluster rounds and so on. And we got a video how the Ukrainians were trying to implement evacuation operation in the vicinity of Klishchiivka. On this video we see how the Ukrainians sent their Bradley, and the Bradley started packing with the troopers and the wounded soldiers. And after that, the Russians start bombing and shelling, and the author of that video claims that he managed to shut down that Bradley, but we haven't received any video confirmation of that. From the other side, the Russians published very interesting video from Klishchiivka. The first video was from the southwestern part, and there's videos very low quality and most of the video is blurred, but the author claims that there is a clashes and close clashes, close combat in the southwestern part of that settlement. So basically, according to the author of this video, the Russian claims that during the previous 24 hours they managed to force the Ukrainians to step back from this part, and that the Russians managed to regain their positions in this area. So we'll see whether it's true or not. But anyway, if we increase the number of updates, that geolocated updates that we got from this bridgehead from the beginning of this week, we see that if we compare like these icons, we see that Ukrainian forces mainly have concentrated their most powerful army exactly in this direction. And basically, this is the Ukrainian primary direction. And the most powerful drone forces the Ukrainians have redeployed in this area. We have received a lot of drone updates, Ukrainian drone attacks in this area. And we have much less updates of usage of drone forces in the vicinity of Orekhova, because many Ukrainians used in this area just armored fist and artillery brigades that Ukrainians were using to bomb the Russian positions. And when talking about Vremivka tactical bridgehead, the Ukrainians were mainly using light vehicles, light infantry, and drone forces to attack the Russian positions. When talking about Bakhmut or Artyomovsk, the Ukrainians were using heavily artillery systems, light vehicles, and a lot of drone forces, a lot of drone like units to attack Russian armored vehicles and so on. When talking about the Russians, during the previous week we've been receiving updates about usage of artillery strikes, of lancet strikes, and of infantry clashes. There are no heavy armored vehicles neither from the Russian nor from the Ukrainian side, just light vehicles, infantry, drones, and artillery systems. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area, the Ukrainians lost 260 soldiers, 18 armored vehicles, and 3 artillery systems. Furthermore, the Russians reported that as a result of airstrike or Iskander strike, they managed to destroy the Ukrainian head command center of tactical group Solidar, which is responsible for Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, and Solidar offensive operations. Now we're moving to Lyman frontline. The Ukrainians published a video how they were bombing, how they managed to discover the Russian positions in the vicinity of Lysychansk oil refinery, and using drone, another evidence of usage, massive usage of drone in this direction, the Ukrainians managed to discover and to attack Russian positions. Now we are moving to directly to Lyman area. We got a lot of updates, but mainly all those updates we got from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. The Russians are saying that as a result of fierce fightings, they managed to repel the Ukrainian attack in direction of Chervono-Dibrova. The Russians managed to repel attack of 67th Mechanized Brigade, probably of the 2nd Battalion, and to counter-attack and to get more positions in direction of Seversky Donetsk. Furthermore, the Russians published the video of Lancet strike in this area against the Ukrainian artillery positions and just the hidden position of Ukrainian forces. Also, the Russians reported that as a result of offensive operation on the west of Zhitlovka, the Russians managed to advance and to get another 3 kilometers to the west in direction of Zhiribets River, so in direction of Terny and Yampolovka. The Russians attacked the forces, of course, of 25th Air Assault Brigade and so on. Furthermore, the Russians published a video on the same direction how they managed to discover and to destroy the Ukrainian checkpoint or stronghold along the Zhiribets River, probably of 25th Airborne Brigade. Furthermore, the Russians reported that they have launched another wave of attack in direction of Sergeyevka in this area and in direction of Nadia, as I understand. The Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of offensive operation of 15th Motorized Brigade of the 2nd Army, the Russians managed to achieve success and to develop their bridgehead for another 1.5 kilometers to the west. Basically, if we calculate the distance between Sergeyevka and Nadia, these two areas, you're gonna see that the distance between these two settlements is exactly 1.5 kilometers. So as I understand, as a result of fierce fightings, the Russians just managed to get the vicinity of that settlement. As I understand, the Russians still haven't captured this area, but let's wait a little bit more. Furthermore, the Russians published the video of bombing and shellings, probably this is old videos, in the vicinity of Karamzinovka bridgehead. On this video we see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian reserves, reinforcements that were heading in the direction of Zhiribets River, and the Russians, after navigation by the drone, attacked those forces. And we have another video how the Russians were bombing and shelling the forest along the Zhiribets River, probably also positions of the Ukrainian forces. Another area where the Russians achieved significant results, according to the Ministry of Defense, is the area in the vicinity of Kuzyumovka. In this direction, the Russians are also moving to the west. According to the Ministry of Defense, the Russians' 7th Motorized Regiment managed to develop their bridgehead for another few kilometers in the west direction. For now, yet we haven't received normal geolocations and normal coordinated maps or something like this. We have just like the reports about movements and so on. But anyway, we see the progress, and we see that this information is confirmed either by the Russian sources and by the Ukrainian and the Western sources as well. The Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of fierce fightings on Lyman frontline, the Ukrainians lost another 90 soldiers and 7 armored vehicles. When talking about Kupiansk frontline, today the Russian blogger, military expert Ryba reported that the Russians also continued their offensive operation and that they managed to enter Sinkovka. And for now, there are clashes in the northern part of that settlement. If it's true, probably within the next 48 hours, the settlement is going to fall and will be captured by the Russians. Also, we have the videos of artillery preparation from the Russians. On this video, we see how the Russians managed to destroy another artillery system of the Ukrainians in this area as a result of artillery duels, as a part of artillery preparation of Russian forces for the Russian forces for the next advances in this area. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost another 30 soldiers and 4 armored vehicles. And probably that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.